If you're sitting there wondering where all these screenshots come from and how they all interact with one another, have no fear, because I'm getting ready to share a compilation of all the Duggar shenanigans I've been keeping up with for the past 2 weeks. Here we go, friends. By now, I'm sure you're all aware that Jill Dillard gave birth to an adorable baby boy who she and Derek named Frederick. Here's some info on that special event before I discuss the snapback and what Hannah Duggar had to say about it.
Is Frederick Michael Dillard, nicknamed Freddie. It looks like he was actually born on the 7th, so they kept it private for a little bit, so good for them. And his name means peaceful ruler, gift from God. They basically explained that Frederick is Derek's name with Fred added to the front. So Fred, Derek. Similarly, Derek's name was a variation of his dad's name, which was Rick, and they added dad to it to be Derek. And so they added to make it Frederick. If Frederick ends up having a son and adding to that name, it's going to be a long ass name. He was born a few weeks early, and he was born the day before Samuel's birthday. It looks like they had a scheduled C-section planned, which is actually good for her because the last 2 births, which were televised, did not go so well. But she did still have a C-section. It just wasn't on the date that they had planned. So even though he was born 4 days ago, they have not come home yet. So they are saying they hope that they come home soon. And congratulations to the family.
For those of you who aren't aware, Derek and Jill Dillard recently gave birth to their 3rd baby boy, and they're calling him Freddie Dillard. Jill and Derek had some kind of a falling out with Jill's parents, Jim Bob and Michelle, though most of the challenges seem to be focused on their relationship with Jim Bob. Jill and Derek actually have a YouTube channel, and they've explained their point of view on that channel. I really encourage you to check it out. If you're not aware, I'm a big fan of Jill, and I made a video about this a while back. I believe it's called Jill is the Real Star of the Duggar family. Check it out if you'd like to know more. But basically, the Dillards have kind of put up a boundary between themselves and the rest of the Duggar family. Obviously, Jill is one of the kids who was most extremely affected by everything that happened with Josh. And because of all of this, it's obviously pretty healthy for Jill and Derek to put up a boundary between themselves and Jim Bob. And obviously that is in some ways going to filter down to her siblings as well. So when it was time for Jill to have a baby shower for this 3rd baby, it was actually Amy Duggar and her mom, Deanna, who threw the shower. Pictures were put out on social media by Jill and Amy, and none of Jill's sisters, brothers, or mom and dad were included in those pictures, and this caused a big snapback from fans and critics alike. Everyone was like, where is Jill's family? Is she totally ostracized at this point? In response to all of these inquiries, Jessa Duggar, Jill's sister, did come out and say, look, I was there. I was at the baby shower with Amy, and it's just unfortunate that my mom had something else to do at that time, and a lot of my siblings were busy, but we didn't take pictures and post them on social media. That doesn't mean we don't care about or love Jill. That all makes sense to me, except that it does make me really sad that I haven't seen Jill pictured with her mom in a really, really long time. And I think based upon the depositions that Jill gave in her lawsuit against the county, it seems like although Jill is very distant from her father, and that's a difficult relationship, she does really love and care about her mom. And I do wonder exactly what's going on there between the two of them. I hope behind the scenes they're able to come together and that Jill is able to have a positive relationship with her mother. But then, of course, Jill gave birth to Freddie, via C-section, as I mentioned earlier. And since then, fans and critics have come out again because the Duggar family, specifically Jill's siblings and mom and dad, have not made any public statements about Freddie the baby. And many people are just questioning why, what is going behind the scenes with this family. It's so sad that they don't seem to acknowledge Jill and her kids. And that's when I was very interested to see that Hannah Duggar, formerly Hannah Wisman, a girl that I pay very little attention to and know very little about, spoke out in a very interesting way. So because I know very little about who Hannah Duggar is, I had to go backwards and look up some information about what was going on with her. Basically, Hannah Duggar, formerly Hannah Wisman, is married to Jeremiah Duggar. They got married this past year, and it's kind of interesting because originally everybody was spreading around tea that Stephen Wisman, Hannah's older brother, was likely courting Jana Duggar. It was a pretty big rumor, even on Duggar snark groups. People were really in support of the idea that Jana and Stephen were together. And later it turned out that it was actually Jeremiah and Hannah who were likely courting and dating, and Jana and Stephen were probably there to be their chaperones.
Super quick wedding update between Jeremiah Duggar and Hannah Wiseman. She did reveal that they are getting married in Nebraska. And I don't think that's a surprise because that's where she had all of her bridal shower and bachelorette parties. But they will be living in Arkansas after they get married, which again isn't too much of a surprise because that's where his family is and that's where he works. She did confirm the March 26th wedding date, which was previously only like a rumor. So she will get getting married on my birthday, and that's next Saturday. And we can look forward to seeing their wedding on YouTube, especially since, their show was canceled.
So recently, Jeremiah and Hannah got married. Hannah has posted some videos to her social media, specifically Instagram, about her life with Jeremiah. And I found it really interesting that allegedly Hannah Duggar actually reached out to a woman who we all call by the pseudonym Pickles. If you're not aware of who Pickles is, please check out one of my older videos entitled Who is Pickles? Pickles is kind of like a fan or anti-fan of the Duggars who has been posting about them, reporting on them, and snarking about them for a long time. Pickles made a big deal about the fact that Jill Duggar was not getting much public support from her family, and according to Pickles, Hannah Duggar messaged her and provided this response. Okay, so very basic. Allegedly, Hannah Duggar wrote to Pickles this response. Pretty much everyone congratulated them, and she's talking about Jill and Derek. It was just through text and in person and not on social media. Their new little guy is a cutie, and we are so excited for them. So I'm sure this seems like no big deal to most, but if this screenshot is for real and Hannah Duggar messaged this woman Pickles, it would be the first time in a long time that any of the Duggars have even acknowledged that Pickles exists. And it's quite unusual because the Duggars tend to take a stance of they're not aware of any of the criticism or any issues that are going on social media. For Hannah Duggar to acknowledge what people are saying and actually write a response and speak back is sort of a big deal. I do wonder what's going to come from Hannah. She seems to be trying to create a little bit of a social media presence for herself, little by little. And I'm wondering if she's going to, having not grown up under the watchful eye of the TV camera, just be more willing to speak out openly about topics that other Duggars are not willing to address. Now, from everything that I've read, Hannah and her family are likely quite conservative, so I don't expect Hannah to be coming out and standing apart from the rest of the Duggars or anything like that, but I just find it interesting that she's been more open than many of the other wives or the Duggar sisters up until this point. But one of the main reasons that I wanted to talk about this subject is to present my own point of view when it comes to Jill and Derek. I really do believe, and I want to believe, that Jill and Derek have asked Jim, Bob, Michelle, and the rest of the Duggar family, including their siblings, to not comment publicly on them. I do believe that Jill and Derek have put up this very firm boundary and they're holding it. They're keeping the wall up. Jill has been the one that was willing to testify in court against her brother. And even though I'm sure there are bad feelings coming from Jim Bob and a lot of drama going on within the family, I don't get the feeling that there's a huge rift between Jill and all of her siblings. It does seem that there's support back and forth between Jill and several people who she still remains close to, like, for example, Joanna. And I remain hopeful that it's more so Jill's decision, that she doesn't want people commenting publicly on her life. And that is why most of the Duggars are not congratulating Jill and Derek or showing up to some of their life events. What do you guys think about the rift between the Dillards and the Duggars, especially Jim Bob? Are you on the side of the fence with me where you believe that Jill is kind of pushing back and that's causing many of the siblings to stay quiet? Or do you think that Jill is being ostracized in some way, shape, or form? Okay, now I want to share a little bit about what I've been reading and looking into about Josh Duggar and the fact we all know that he's being charged $50,000 by the federal government as restitution for the crime that he committed. And it seems like there's a lot of moving parts when it comes to where all the money is coming from to support Josh through the trial and now once he's in jail. I'd like to show you some information about what Jim, Bob, and Michelle are doing to possibly offset all of the money that they're having to put into Josh's case.
So Jim, Bob, and Michelle have really been staying out of the spotlight. They did not, which a lot of people noticed, put an announcement for Jill and Derek's new baby. But again, they're estranged and all that because the parents ended up keeping all the money. It's a whole thing. And also, I mean, yeah, that's rough and it's hard when stuff like that happens with parents, but this whole brood, maybe, like, it's a no for me, you know? But property records recently have shown that they are selling off property little by little. So I'm assuming some of that has to be for Josh's legal fees because the attorneys he had, the amount, all of that could not have been cheap. And then now they are fully supporting Anna. So a little bit of property is getting sold off here and there. So people are kind of wondering about their financial situation because they have no show and who's going to rent a commercial space from Jim, Bob, and Michelle Duggar after everything that's happened.
Okay, and here's some information I found potentially really interesting about the possible cost of Josh Duggar's legal fees.
Josh,
call me Dad.
so how the hell did I get to this extremely low number? We're lowballing it. A lot of different ways. Now, Josh didn't have just one attorney, he had four. We're going to start with the first one because one of the attorneys on his team couldn't be even included in this estimate because he typically works on contingency cases. Contingency cases are cases where they take the money at the end, like when you get in a car accident or anything like that. And so they usually end up taking 33% or 40% plus if you end up in court over it, plus costs. It's a whole thing. So keep in mind, this is only three of his attorneys. This is Ian T. Murphy, and he costs $475 per hour. This is Travis Wayne Story, and he makes $275 per hour. And finally, number three, Justin Gelfand, who is $475 per hour. Plus, we're going to assume that they're charging for some paralegal fees also, so we're going to add another $90 in there for that. That all adds up to this, but keep in mind it's a really, really low estimate because we don't know what one of the attorneys was making, and we also really just don't know how much costs he was going to have to pay, copies, mailing, that sort of stuff, right? This amount would be for 4 days of a trial where they only charged for 7 hours a day, which would never ever happen. Keep that in mind. So it's, again, very low. For a 4-day chunk of trial, which there were at least 3 of these, you're looking at $36,820. But again, multiply it by 3. And you get this, and you know what, this is for 12 days in court, which they had much more than that, obviously. So again, low estimate, but you know what, let's go with this. Now, what about all the time in between being retained, which you have to pay a big retainer and all of that good stuff, especially for a case like this, and actually getting convicted? Josh was arrested in November 2019, which was 141 weeks ago. So if his attorneys were spending about 5 hours a week on him, which is a very low estimate again for this type of case, that would end up being roughly 705 hours over that time period. And at that hourly rate, this is what you're going to get. Now, the 5 hours a week is a gross underestimate because of all the stuff that you have to do behind the scenes. You got to get exhibits together. You got to investigate. You have to respond when they make something, or they put in a bunch of motions too. And all of that is very, very time consuming. So it would be way more than 5. But like I said, gross underestimate, we're missing a whole ass attorney in here and a lot of other stuff. Travel, food, yeah, it costs. You got all that stuff. So it could easily be 3 to 5 times this much. But you know what? Even though they're charging this much and they're making this much, you know what that money will never do? It'll never erase the fact that they defended this person when the majority of them have children of their own.
Do you really think that the Duggars paid over $1 million for Josh's defense? I'll tell you what, I do. I believe they had to put even more money than that into defending Josh. And fortunately for the children in his family, their defense was unsuccessful. I think the Duggars have plenty of money, probably millions of dollars, especially tied up in all of their residential assets. But Josh himself, I'm not really sure if he has money left, if it's all just entangled with his family and they're going to take good financial care of Anna. It wouldn't surprise me if they expect Anna to live very poorly, because I remember in the early part of the show, that was something that Jim Bob and Michelle did themselves. They did try to budget very much so when it came to their home, their family, and their children. And they might expect very much the same or even more from Anna. I'm continuing to keep an eye on any information that comes out on multiple platforms. I'm especially interested in continuing down a rabbit hole with looking at some of the Duggars' political connections. So look out for some more videos featuring some of that content. It's nighttime here, and I'm getting ready to head to bed. I hope you take some time to head down your own rabbit hole.